in a place that's local if you live on the Central Coast. So it's very cool. They fly active duty members, first responders, and veterans out to this place, and it's a week-long program where, basically it's like, yes, there's time for testimony and talk about all the bullshit that each person went through, but that kind of gets set to the side, and it's like, hey, let's expel the myth about PTSD. It's not a disorder, first of all. It's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation. Two, all these pills and medication that you're taking, like, that is literally a breeding ground for more of this, like snowball effect I was talking about earlier. It creates a cancerous environment. It's actually toxic, in my opinion.
Now, did you go right into that after you've kind of realized you had some stuff you needed to work through, or did it take you some time to find a group of people that you could really talk to about your problems?
I mean, I always had, the guys that I served with right off the bat, but basically I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. It's like I knew I was affected, but not, it wasn't what I would call like a really bad case. It was not my best of times, I'll tell you that, but like there's definitely guys that have it a lot worse, you know what I mean? So, but what I did notice, though, upon going along with the whole treatment plan of, okay, well, this is what's going on, so I'll take these drugs, basically, prescribed, was that whatever situation I started in just continued to get worse and worse and worse, and it didn't get any better until I just flushed them all down the toilet and was like, okay, well, this is clearly not working, so I'm not going to continue down this path, you know what I mean? And it was after that that I actually learned about Mighty Oaks and went through the program. It was really good. It's being around other veterans and stuff like that you, you can communicate with, and they know what you've been through, and you have all these shared experiences. It's a totally different ballgame than it is talking to, a psychologist. Some of them are very good at their jobs, but if the psychologist is not a veteran, or, it does create kind of a barrier where it's difficult to talk to them. But I'll say on the flip side of that, though, is that sometimes that's what's needed in certain situations, is somebody that doesn't know or hasn't experienced it in that way. So that way, the whole way of explaining it is essentially different. If you were talking to somebody that's been through it, maybe you don't divulge as much because you think they get it, that type of thing. You know what I mean? So there's, for both applications, I can see a use, but I would definitely say from personal experience that other veterans and other active duty members that you just stay in touch with is probably your best bet in terms of just kind of, staying level with it.
And I think it's important to say too that it's not just veterans that have issues with this. It's first responders, like you said, rape victims. I think it's important to give all those people light too, because it's not just, it could happen if you're almost in a car accident.
Yep.
And you hear a loud squeak in the tires. Something can trigger that down the line, and you don't even realize it's there until something like that happens and it pops up, and you then have a panic attack or something. I know dreams are pretty like you can have vivid dreams of a reoccurring thing that happened to you. Like, how did your symptoms kind of show themselves to your, like, did you realize, like, okay, I have this dream and I wake up and I'm in cold sweats, or what kind of...
Yeah. I mean, I had like some issues with dreams and stuff like that, and obviously sleep was a problem. But like I said, I wonder what it would have been like without the medication initially, because I think that those things just kind of worsened all the symptoms. But what was I going to say? Something about first responders. Oh, it was like a lot of the first responders that go through there and stuff like that. If you're a police officer, for instance, up in Oakland or down in LA, or really anywhere for that matter, a lot of times you experience combat related events on a daily basis, coming across, terrible car accidents and rape victims and murder, homicide investigations, shooting, stabbings, all these things, and just dealing with people that kind of suck the life out of you, and you have to look at somebody that's destroyed themselves, and it can be really difficult. A lot of firefighters and police officers struggle with those issues, and everybody's like, I wonder why they're so on edge, and it's like, gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, I remember hearing a couple police officers came in, and I think we had a fireman too, come into one of our classes and talk about how the worst possible thing that you can go up to is, as a police officer, is a drunk driving accident where the driver of the car was drunk and he survived, but the underage girl that was in the passenger seat doesn't. And then you have to go and tell that person's parents
Right.
that they just lost their daughter.
Yeah. And you see, and everybody, is not to discount veterans and what's going on with them, but it does seem like everybody forgets about first responders and, oh, the cops are a bunch of assholes and firefighters are super cool, but they're totally fine. They have no issues. And it is weird that nobody really talks about that because they experience just as much hardship in those, in the line of their duty and or duties, I should say. And they're surrounded by people that they know and care about and love and that, understand each other. They're surrounded by their fellow officers and fellow firefighters and stuff. And yet that doesn't always help.
And it doesn't always get brought up either that
Right.
they suffer from the same stuff that veterans do, but they're exposed to it just as much as a veteran is. If you're in the police department for 30 years, is like some of those guys' careers, they're pretty substantial.
Yeah, I'd say they experience more, honestly. If you're in the military and you're not actively deployed like all the time and going outside the wire all the time, I mean that's what a police officer does. They leave the station, they're outside the wire, so to speak. They're on patrol and they're coming across situations every single day that have the potential to kind of fuck with their psyche, you know what I mean? So they have to be very strong, level-headed individuals, and there's just, over the years, a lot of that stuff can pile up. And of course, memories stay with them and stuff like that. Doesn't mean they have a disorder, though. And I think that the lack of respect that our country shows for law enforcement nowadays really can't help the situation. It's kind of a very thankless job as it is. And on top of it, these are just, your real American men and women that love their communities and want to give back and serve, and they're willing to put their lives on the line to do that, and everybody thinks they're a bunch of assholes, and I just ugh.
I think it's always the fact that you can get in trouble by them that always gets me on edge whenever I see a police officer.
Of course.
But I definitely have a great appreciation for what they do day to day, keeping the sanity. Because if there was no police officers, it would be like Wild Wild West, and everyone would be shooting each other, and it would be chaos.
I was at Taco Bell last night, kind of a random interlude, but I was at Taco Bell last night and a drunk driver had hit another car in the parking lot, so I reported it and then I had to talk to the police. And kind of like you were saying, you're afraid of getting in trouble and stuff like that. I'm sitting there talking with the cops. I was totally calm and fine and everything like that, but I was still nervous, you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm the one reporting the crime, and they're totally thanking me for it, and I'm sitting there like,
You're still nervous.
You're still on edge.
I see a cop going the other way, and I get nervous.
Yeah.
Like, you just clench. We were in the car the other day, me and your sister, and she had her feet up on the seat, and she saw a cop instantly put her feet down. Because you don't want to give them any reason to come and pull you over.
Right.
And it's just one of those, I think they don't get enough credit when it comes to seeing traumatic experiences and going through just as, violent. I could only imagine how intense seeing a car accident and rolling up on blood coming out of a car and, those crime scene type, only you would think it would happen in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was rolling down to San Luis and there was a car accident on the grade, and it was horrific. There was a body hanging out of the car, blanket over him, and I could only imagine seeing that, being the first person to come up across that. And I would imagine if you saw that and you're driving in a car, just a normal civilian, you could also get something from that.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a natural instinct, like you were saying, is your brain kind of remembers the bad shit. Like if you were if you were way, way back in caveman days and a saber-toothed tiger is coming after you, you might have some bad dreams about saber-toothed tigers for a little while.
Right.
And it's just that natural part of the brain, like you were saying, that's that flight mode, or the fight mode, not the flight mode. And it's just kind of one of those things that everybody has their own thing, but it's I would have never known that you had any issues with that from meeting you and talking to you. And I think a lot of people are like that. They have shit that happens, but they don't. It doesn't show on the surface.
Right, right. And a lot of, yeah, because veterans and law enforcement and firefighters and stuff like that are struggling with some form of post-traumatic stress, um, regardless of how large or small it is, they tend, if they're actually dealing with the problem, they tend not to wear it on their sleeve. You know what I mean? Like it's something that they remain kind of reclusive about. So it's not, you wouldn't just randomly go talk to everybody about your problems and stuff like that. It's not very.
Now, was it hard for you to like go and talk to someone about it? Like, was it hard for you to like kind of convince yourself to go and try to put yourself in the
Yeah,
program?
I hated it.
Yeah. So, what do you think? A lot of people don't. It's probably the ego, like you were saying.
I don't know if it's so much like the ego thing in terms of like going into counseling, as much as it was just the fact that I knew that I was going to be talking to somebody that doesn't get it, and I just didn't want to talk to them about it because I don't know them, I don't have a relationship with them, and at the end of the day, some of them might care and stuff like that, but it's like, I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. Divulging my feelings to strangers or counselors that are taking notes on you, it was just, it had to be done sometimes, but like I really don't enjoy that process at all. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anybody that has to go through a counseling situation, you have a preconceived notion of what it would be like in your head, like when you walk in there. And I'm sure that it probably wasn't exactly like you thought it was going to be like. Was it like, did you have a pre kind of conclusion of like, oh, I'm going to sit down in a leather chair and this lady's going to ask me a bunch of questions, and did that like kind of play out like you thought it was going to in your head, or was it once you got there you're like, okay, I can do this?
I mean, I really went to just a handful of counseling sessions before I just stopped because I wasn't really going anywhere. But no, the thing that bothered me the most about it was they treat you like you're some sort of broken thing, you know what I mean? Like with kid gloves, it's really obnoxious because it's like, well, okay, you're a Marine and you've done all these things, and essentially you've gotten your ass handed to you on a daily basis, and so it definitely toughens you up. And then you go from that environment to like sitting in some psychologist's office where they're just being very careful and gentle with you, and the words that they use and the way they talk to you think they're talking to a kid sometimes. So it's just like the whole thing is uncomfortable. Ugh, with a side of ugh.
So, but when you went into the program with the fellow Marines, what was the difference about that, knowing that they all went through the same thing?
Oh, like Mighty Oaks?
Yes.
Yeah.
So what you kind of knew they all went through the same thing, and it wasn't just a psychologist that was going to baby you.
Right.
Was that easier for you to open up?
Yeah. Well, yeah, because there is no like preconceived notion, from the staff essentially there, and there are no kid gloves. Even though it's a faith-based organization, swearing is, completely normal. It's in everyday speak for a lot of the veteran community and active, duty members. So it's like, I just like the environment, especially based on the fact that I was like, hey, this is just like being back in the infantry. Essentially, you're just surrounded by a bunch of men's men, and some, have larger issues than other, and they're trying to figure it out. But you're surrounded by a bunch of manly ass dudes. That sounds kind of homoerotic, but
Yeah.
You get the point. And it's just kind of like the bullshit takes a back seat again, and you can actually focus on the issues at hand and really talk honestly and openly with each other. You're not sitting there like you're not treated like you're damaged goods. It's, hey, like, how about you shape up? Or go fuck yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so
like fix it.
Do you think that should be like once you come out of the military and you're not active duty, do you think you should have to go through a program like that just to kind of be like reinitiated in a normal society, like kind of go through a kind of little talk, even if you don't think you have any issues?
I think that doing something preemptively like that could potentially be a really good thing. The resources that it would take to do that are pretty significant, And the thing is, if you get out of the military, I'm all about the free will kind of thing. You're a citizen again, like you have rights.